There are a number of ways of getting data into our project. One way is to upload data, whether it be CAD data or other types of data, but we can also create data, a lot of different types, links, projects, polls. We can also just create a design. Let's start making a chair. We'll just give our file a name, then we'll click Create, and a new tab will be added to the Fusion environment. Let's be very creative with this chair, very flexible. So let's start using Sculpt tools. So I'll click the Create Form tool. Fusion 360 will warn me that in order to have solid modeling functions, we'll have to leave the Sculpt environment, and that's okay. Let's start out with something very simple, just a box. We click on the plane that we want to use. We don't have to click right on it, but the grid will give us a preview. We drag out the rough size that we want in the form of a rectangle. And once we click, we'll immediately get a 3D shape. We can drag the height, we can drag the length, we can drag any of the arrows to resize the overall shape. Then we can click and drag on the manipulator to change the number of faces along our shape. We can do this till we get the number of faces that we want. And when I'm happy with it, I can right-click and use the marking menu, or I can just simply click OK in the dialog box and generate my shape. Let's take a moment and look at one of the most important editing tools in the Sculpt environment. With a right-click, we can access the Edit Form tool. I can pick on any edge, face, or point, but let's take a look at what happens. When I click on a point, I can drag the arrows to move that point around. Okay, we can also click on multiple points. I'll click an edge now, and in addition to being able to move the same way that we did the points, we can move along a plane as well. And we can also start to scale the geometry by dragging these edges. When I pick on a face, I can do all of the moving and scaling that I did before. We can scale in all directions at once by grabbing the center point, and we can rotate by grabbing the curved manipulators. The most important thing here is to be experimental, is to explore what the options are. We can also, while we're modifying, change the coordinate space. So we can have it based on our view, based on the world, based on the face or element that we have selected, so we can keep our movements kind of normal to that direction. When we're done, we just click OK, and we've updated our model. In this case, though, I want to keep the changes just a little more traditional. So let's undo. We can also undo in groups, a great capability when you're just experimenting. So let's start to build our model in a little more deliberate fashion. The first thing I want to do is start to create legs. Well, there's going to be 4 legs on this, so I can use symmetry to say that anything I change on one side will be affected on the other. In fact, I can use symmetry more than once by picking symmetry in another direction. So I can say anything I want on one corner, I want on all 4 corners. Let's use the View Cube to roll our model over. And let's start the Edit Form tool. I'll pick on one of the corner surfaces and grab the arrow in the triad and just give it a tug. And you'll see it's pulling all 4 corners down. Well, that's not going to give me the result that I want. A really important key to remember is the Alt key. When I'm dragging a face or an edge and I'm holding the Alt key, it will add additional faces and edges. So here it's starting to build out a whole new group of faces as I just click and drag while holding the Alt key. I can do this over and over and over again until I get the result that I want. Again, an important thing to remember here that there is no exact right or wrong. This is very much about what you like, what inspires you, so feel free to explore with the number of faces you create or the distance between them. Starting to get the look that I was hoping for, so let me just pull this face back up, square off the bottom of the legs a little bit, and call that good. I'll zoom in just a touch and say OK. Well, let's go back into the Edit Form tool and I'll show you just how powerful this tool is. We can make a lot of different changes now that we have what's basically looks like a stool at this point. Let's start thinning up these legs. They look pretty heavy. So we'll use Edit Form. I'll click an edge. If I double click an edge, it will select all the adjacent edges. So I'll do that several times, and then I'll grab my manipulator, and I can change the scale. And here it's changing all of the scale, including it stretching their distance apart. Now it's contracting their distance apart. It's thinning my legs and somewhat shortening them. So I'll grab the bottom edge here, zoom in just a little bit, make it a little easier. And let me pull that down to sharpen the foot of my legs again, just a little bit. Now you might want to narrow up your legs a little further or narrow the foot a little bit. That's fine. Now let's slide this up to sharpen that transition into the base or into the bottom of the seat. There. As you can see, it's all about feel. It's all about experimenting and getting a shape that you want. All right, so I'm going to leave the legs alone now. I could do more to them, but let's keep moving. Now, in this case, I don't want to have symmetry on anymore, so I'll say Clear Symmetry and select the body. What I want to do is start developing the back of my chair. Now, there's a neat way, if I wanted more faces, I can insert edges into the middle of faces to make more faces. So I'll just slide this over here. Again, just rough it in. You can put precise numbers in if you want, like half of the distance down that face. And now let's once again use our friend Edit Form. I've turned symmetry off, so I can't just pick one, but that's okay. It gives me more control. I'll pick all four of them. As you pick them, you'll notice the triad kind of centers itself. Now I'm going to hold Alt and pick on this plane. So I'm only moving in a plane, but I can slide from side to side. And just by releasing and clicking again, I just add more and more faces. Very, very simple process. Let's add just a couple more sections. As you can see, we can tip it in and out. Now let's lean that back just a little bit. Give some clearance for the shoulders. That looks good. Now the top of this surface isn't quite lining up or isn't quite squaring with the direction of the curvature. So let's just slide that down a little bit, and let's grab one of those curved manipulators and just tip it back. That looks a little more natural. Well, right now I'm going to say that's probably pretty good. The next thing I want to do is start making some more radical modifications using tools other than Edit Form and Insert Edge.